Hello and welcome to Adventures in Venueland, an EVMC podcast. Join us for this all-access pass backstage and behind the scenes with some of the brightest minds that cross the scope of the live event industry. I'm Dave Rettelberger.
And I'm Paul Hooper. We'll introduce you to incredible guests who journey with us as we dive deep into the world of venues, tours, festivals, and everything in between. Grab your laminate and meet us in Venueland.
What is a hospitality concept and why should you care? Well, you're going to find out today when our adventure takes us to Nashville, Tennessee. We're talking with a woman who's, done stuff with venues, promoters, media. She's done a little bit of everything. And right now she's creating hospitality with TVG, where she is marketing director. Please welcome Olivia Christian.
Hi, guys. So excited to be here.
Glad to have you here. So first, for folks who aren't aware, tell us what TVG is.
So TVG is a hospitality group that focuses a lot on the fan and artist experience through multiple venues, through multiple bars and restaurant concepts, one of which I lead at the Orion Amphitheater in Huntsville, Alabama. So TVG is well on its way to opening multiple venues in the United States, but Huntsville, the Orion in Huntsville is their first and sort of the flagship in the U.S.
Tell us about the Orion.
The Orion is a beautiful 8,000 capacity Greek-inspired amphitheater. It's in the heart of Mid-City District, which is located in Huntsville, Alabama, a very rapidly growing city in Alabama. We just surpassed Birmingham to be the largest city in Alabama, which is surprising. The Orion, we focus on obviously large scale concerts, everyone from Lana Del Rey to Stevie Nicks to Snoop Dogg, but we also have a huge focus on community and cultural events, on sustainability practices, and obviously hospitality, both for fans, for artists, and everyone in between.
I love the design of the theater. So if anyone has not seen it, they should look it up because, like you said, it does have this very Greek-inspired look to it. Tell us, I guess, more about that. What went into the thought on that? I think often people, when they're building new venues now, that not to say that they're not artistic and cleverly designed, but they're usually focusing more on the future and making it look like it's a spaceship that has landed in your backyard and not necessarily taking inspiration from some of these really iconic venues over time.
Well, I think especially thinking about the amphitheater as a real third space. Obviously, if your first space is your home, your second space is your work and your career, so creating this third space for entertainment that an amphitheater has always been meant for. And the design really reflects that. So we worked with a lot of great partners. It was a long process to design what would be perfect for that site. But what I love especially about it is, like you kind of said, spaceship really fits well here. Huntsville is a huge space and defense town. So a lot of people thought we would be leaning a bit more into that mid-century architecture, which Huntsville has a lot of. But I think it really lends itself to the sweeping views of what you get from almost every seat at the Orion. And there's really not a bad area or bad seat in the house. We made very sure of that. But the way the amphitheater was designed was to do that so that everyone has the best sound possible, the best sight lines possible. And in that sort of brown bowl, you can easily get that. But then our backstage really does lend itself to a lot of that mid-century. We have furniture from NASA. We have, it's a lot more mid-century back there. It's leaning on, Muscle Shoals Fame Studios, Muscle Shoals Sound Studio, and, the 60s, 70s eras there. So we kind of tie the two together in a really interesting way, I think.
I dropped my kid off at Space Camp a few years ago, and then spent some time driving around.
A lot of people do.
That was my one experience there. It's a neat city. Tell us a little bit about your role with TVG. What you're doing on a day-to-day basis.
Right. So as marketing director, I am leading an incredible team of people. I have a content director, a marketing manager, and a designer. And we make sure that we are essentially telling the good story of the Orion. We're making sure that we are getting our large scale concerts and events in front of audiences, not only in Huntsville, but across the country and across the world. We want to make sure that our community and cultural events also have that platform. We do a lot of really interesting work with organizations in the community. We want to make sure we're giving those organizations a platform and a space to have their events, as this is truly a venue for Huntsville. It's a venue for the surrounding areas. So making sure that we're doing everything from creating marketing plans per event to creating a larger institutional marketing plan. I love a good marketing mix. So trying out, new trends, trying out something a little different and seeing what works not only in Huntsville, which is an interesting market in and of itself, but regionally and nationally.
What's it been like for you, kind of on a more personal side, to work on and with a venue that is sort of in its infancy? It is kind of new and young, and that's exciting because you kind of get to build what you're wanting that to be. You're not coming into some stodgy practices that are like, oh, this is the way it's always been. It's like
Right.
you get to create that this is the way it's always been.
Yes.
But what's that been like?
It's been very exciting. I obviously have a bit more of a personal connection to Huntsville. I was born and raised in Huntsville. I went to school there. I graduated and moved to Nashville, and so I've worked with amazing venues before. I was lucky enough to work with Ryman Auditorium, with War Memorial Auditorium, and Tennessee Performing Arts Center, and those were really amazing people to work with. Great buildings. I mean, phenomenal in their own right, but it felt like kind of coming home, but also an opportunity to really tell a story of Huntsville and of what TVG is working to do just a bit differently with their venues. And, being able to really flex what I had learned as a marketing manager at Promoter in S2 previously to working with TVG. And be back on the other side and the venue side and kind of take that promoter, what I had learned as a marketer for a promoter and apply it on the other side of things. So I love having a challenge. I love multiple challenges. And I knew that opening a venue would certainly be one, but it was probably the most rewarding thing I've ever done. And it continues to be.
So one of the challenges for you has to be you're in Nashville now, but you're working on stuff, and obviously you know Huntsville. But what's that like, and what's your schedule like? Are you like some in Nashville all the time, or do you get down to Huntsville? Tell us about your adventure.
So I truly do believe that a good marketer, is on the ground and kind of marrying both sides of telling the story from a networking perspective and, working where the industries are, but also being on the ground at the venue, making sure I'm keeping up with everything that's happening, keeping up with all the great departments that we have and all of their advances and what's changing. So part of having a team in Huntsville, my content manager and my marketing manager are both in Huntsville, and my designer is up here in Nashville with me. So I do think that I have the privilege of going to Huntsville a lot more during our concert season, as that those are just bigger lifts and require more
Sure.
people. And, we obviously have a lot of great media who come and I escort and make sure everything is going well with that, but also being able to build that team and make sure that I'm surrounding myself with people who I know I can trust when I am up in Nashville and can represent the venue has been very, very important to me. So I spend, I would say, 70% of my time in Nashville, 30% in Huntsville. But when the season starts up, as it just has, then I'll be in Huntsville a lot more. But I've got family and friends there, and I love going, so it's not a problem at all.
What's that season look like for you all? I know often that varies depending on how far south you are and how long
Yes.
the weather stays warm. But is that, something like April to October, or does it extend a little bit further because it gets warmer down there?
Absolutely. And we have tried to kind of push that back every year. I mean, March is becoming a much easier month to have events in. We started this year early April. We started last year early April, and we push all the way into late November if we can. But we have an excellent programming manager, Brittany Johnston. She always pushes for things, to land on the calendar as late as possible. And I think all of us would be happy, with some of the weather we get in Huntsville, especially to do a January concert or February concert. So we're always kind of making sure with our community and cultural events, that those are sprinkled in well throughout the year, but also attracting big talent whenever we can. But truly April through late November, I would say, is the season.
TVG kind of says, as a statement, we create hospitality concepts across the world that are built on the power of experience. And I think that those are some interesting words, but what does that mean to you?
I believe truly that the experience that we are delivering people, whether you are an artist, whether you're part of the crew, whether you're a fan and this is your first concert ever, or just your first concert at the Orion, that experience from the moment you hear about the show to actually leaving the site with those memories is so key, because sometimes that's the best thing that's going to happen to someone either that week, that month, that year, maybe ever, especially if it's your favorite concert ever, favorite event ever. I think that TVG does such a excellent job in creating hospitable moments throughout that journey. So whether it's making sure you have all of the information that you need before you even think about how you're getting to the venue, to arriving and being greeted with some genuine Southern hospitality, to being offered, food and beverage options that are just more elevated than your average concert venue, to making sure that you get to your seat and you're very happy with, the view and the sound, and you're surrounded by, 8,000 people who love this artist just as much as you do. I think that there's something really special in being able to create each step in that journey for a fan, and likewise for an artist who's, getting off the road potentially after a long tour and just wants a gorgeous back of house with green space and natural lighting and, space to spread out and enjoy themselves and not have to think about anything, or maybe they want to go to space camp. Maybe they want to go, explore Huntsville and do something a little different, or maybe they're looking for an awesome rehearsal space before they kick off. So I think what TVG does well is consider every single bit of those experiences and every single bit of that journey, and make sure it's all tied up with a bow and delivered to people who are signing up to, to come spend their money with us.
We were talking about how also Orion has a really awesome sustainability initiative, right? With lots of things going on. And could you tell us a little bit more about that? And, admittedly, I when I saw that, I was not only impressed with it, but also, coming from someone who is in Kentucky, and I know how Kentucky is perceived from the outside states. We're not necessarily known to be the most progressive state. And I'm sure Alabama is in the same boat with that. So I love that there is this massive initiative with all these really cutting edge things happening that can kind of break that stereotype. So, what all do you all have going on down there?
Well, we are very, very proud of our sustainability efforts. Our sustainability coordinator, Drew, has been excellent in helping us really tell this story positively as something that we're able to do and that we're privileged to be able to do. We have zero waste that we send to landfill thanks to our partners with Covanta. We have a reusable cup program. Everything that we pour gets poured into a reusable cup. And since we opened in May 2022, we have reused over 500,000 cups, saving that many cups.
Wow, that's a big number.
It is a big number, and we're thrilled that we're able to offer that service. And we also allow water bottles into the venue and have water stations around, so that's something that people can easily take advantage of. We also have an on-site artist garden kind of in our artist area in the back, where we grow fruits, vegetables, herbs, and those are used as garnish for our drinks, or with our new brick and mortar food partner, Odette. They use those in a lot of the offerings there. We also have a great bar upstairs. All of our bars are different concepts, and one in our upper concourse is called Carbon. And $1 from every purchase at Carbon, which is an eco-friendly bar, goes to Tennessee Riverkeeper to continue helping keep our drinking water clean. So we have way more than I could ever even talk about on a podcast, but it's something that we're so thrilled to be able to offer, not only as a venue in Alabama, but as a leader, in the nation and globally, as sustainable as possible.
I know you were just part of a panel that was about designing the venue experience.
Mhm.
This is kind of cool. Talk to me about, this panel and kind of some of your takeaways from it.
It was such an honor to be moderating that panel because we were able to talk to our friends at Yellowhammer Creative. We work with them often on our show posters that we provide as gifts for our artists. And then our designer, Rachel Trask, is excellent. Our managing director, Ryan Murphy, was on that panel, and so was Saturn founder, Brian Teasley. And a lot of what we talked about on that panel included how design is so instrumental in that, especially information part of the journey of getting not only people to pay attention and want to buy a ticket, but also getting them to the venue safely and happily and getting them, around that venue easily. So, one of the big takeaways, I think, was that every single person agreed that consistency in design, not only from designing the venue itself, but designing that information or designing how it's put out on our own channels or in marketing efforts is so important. Making sure that, like I said earlier, a person coming to the venue for the first time is getting the exact information that they need, but also the person who's coming for the 10th time is learning something a little new that they might not have before and is guiding a different experience for them as they go to a venue that they continue finding something new and different for.
I love that design forward mentality too. I mean, I think sometimes that is unfortunately an afterthought sometimes, where you'll see different venues that are like, we just got to do it because we've got to do it. And they don't maybe take the extra minute to put a little bit of polish on it, and it's hard to show that in numbers, but really it is something that delivers a better experience for people and also makes them want to spend their time engaging with it. If they see something that's not visually presented great, they're going to skip over it. And we're all kind of trained to look for eye-catching things, and so I love just the thought of kind of putting a lot of intention into that.
Well, there's a lot to be said for if you arrive at a venue and let's say you haven't, no one should have to plan for 6 days how they're going to get to a venue or how to get in or whatever it is. But if you have most of that information and every single bit of that, you going to the venue, you walking in the door, you getting a drink is seamless and you're met with that smile, then you're already having a better concert experience than anywhere else so far, right? Like maybe you didn't even have to map to the venue because it was so clear. You clicked a link in our know before you go information and that took you to the right place. There's no frustration, getting in. There's no frustration with traffic. It just creates so much more of a seamless experience. And you're going to remember that night so much clearer as the best concert you've ever been to, right?
And you won't remember it for the opposite reason, which I think we all
Exactly.
experience it. Sometimes it's like all it takes is one thing to go wrong for someone, and then they're like they're ready to write off
They're
the
done.
entire
They're
venue.
not coming back.
Exactly. And you lose them. So sometimes you just need to make it as smooth as possible, and then let the event speak for itself because it's going to be memorable.
Exactly. And we have a lot of guest services assistants that are excellent at providing that smile, but also really helping people get from point A to point B as needed or addressing situations, just with the utmost respect and professionalism and kindness. And I think that also sets us well apart and creates that more, hospitality-led experience.
I was pretty cool that you guys were designated a top East Coast amphitheater on Billboard's 2024 top music venues list. And, it's funny because often you see the awards go to Nashville and they go to LA and they go to New York, and it seems like it's just because that's where people know. What have you been able to do to get on the radar to kind of help the venue get recognition like that?
Well, as I was speaking about earlier, I think that the artist experience is so crucial here. And I think when artists enjoy themselves and pass that information along to management and agents and everyone else, I think that word of mouth is something that as a marketer, I can't necessarily buy, right? I mean, I could have a budget larger than anyone that I've ever worked with, and I still couldn't I couldn't buy someone having an excellent experience, whether it's a concert goer or an artist and going to tell everyone they know about it and saying, hey, I want to come back. How do we make that happen? And then, maybe management is working with other artists that they're like, I want to deliver an excellent tour to this artist, and I'm gonna schedule the Orion because I know that they'll take care of them, especially if, they're at the end or whatever. So I think that's huge. I also think that marketing mix that I was speaking about, like, we are not afraid to try something a little different. We're not afraid to take a little bit, larger of that piece of pie and throw maybe some money at something more national or more industry facing, knowing that those are the people making those decisions and that we want to showcase some gorgeous photography and videography that we've been able to work with partners to get, or that our content manager has sourced. And we just have a huge story to tell. I feel like with this sustainability and with this like elevated hospitality, these niche concessions concepts, there's so much to tell. So I think once you start telling that story, there are a lot of things that we're doing differently that are getting picked up more nationally, and people are coming to experience it for themselves. So I think that really all of those things kind of combined allow for a pretty robust experience, going back to that word continually, that contributes to us being recognized in these amazing lists, which we were so honored to be included in.
When you look at what you've been able to do there, give me some idea that you've had that's really, because you've talked a lot about, trying to do this or that, or provide a unique food experience or think for an artist. But what is something that really stands out that you're most proud of?
I'm honestly most proud of the that's a hard one because I'm so proud of so many things that we've done. And I think that it kind of depends on the pillar we're talking about. From a culture and community events perspective, I'm thrilled that a community that I care so much about has embraced the Orion so much and has created some excellent community events that we're drawing thousands and thousands of people in. And that's really becoming what our season is based around. Like we have, I think last year was 30 something concerts and 90 something community and cultural events. I think that an amphitheater like the Orion gets that national attention sometimes just for those concerts, but being able to provide that space for community that is so welcoming of it and is taking advantage of the multiple spaces we do have at the Orion to put on their yoga classes or their Hispanic Heritage Festival or their Records and Retro Fair or whatever it is. I think that we're really delivering on a promise that we made to Huntsville by scheduling those events and working as hard as possible to make them successful. So I think in that regard, I'm so proud of that. But then I'm also so proud of the idea that this team that I've been on for almost 3 years now, that we've built from the ground up, has created award-winning content, has, created an award-winning website in Huntsville, Alabama. And kind of as Paul was referencing earlier, I think some people don't give Alabama all the credit that it deserves when you think about people being very passionate about the arts and about entertainment and about creating that space for people to come enjoy that. So I'm so proud to be leading a marketing team that is, I can truly say, award-winning because they're so passionate about what they do and putting out interesting, intriguing content that's not only educational about the Orion, but also educational about Huntsville and all the great things that Huntsville, the Rocket City, has to offer outside of just rockets.
So, obviously, you've got a lot to offer throughout your career, but I know one of your first gigs was as a stage assistant at Bonnaroo, right?
Yeah.
Taking it way back. So talk to us about where that interest, for live events, kind of began and how you kind of got that first gig in the industry.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I actually started out, I wanted to be a writer for Rolling Stone. I mean, nobody else does, right? It was just me. And I knew that I wanted to be involved with concerts and live events so badly. I loved music so much. I was always the one making all of our playlists for everything from, high school on. But I started promoting, quote unquote, in high school. I had friends that were in this little punk band called Seen Not Heard, and I had printed some flyers and I was putting them all over lockers. And that was kind of my first gig. And I really enjoyed people kind of coming
We
up
got
to
to
me.
get a copy of those flyers.
I
Definitely.
first off, I've got to find one. I know I have one somewhere, but it was just this awesome feeling of like I'm part of putting on a show, right? Like I don't want to play an instrument.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't want to do any of that, but I want to be like the person people are like, "Hey, where is that at again?" And what's going to happen? What's going on that night? So that's really like way back when in high school when that started. And then I attended Belmont University, kept on that track of like journalism, but then I had some friends in the communications and PR department, and they were like, yeah, we get to talk about these shows or these events, that's the plan. And I was like, oh, okay, so I can write every once in a while, but I can really use all these different communication techniques to tell people about things that I'm very passionate about. So I kind of switched over to that, and then from there I'm a pretty persistent person, and I landed an internship with Ryman Auditorium, and the woman I was working for at the time, Lisa Ann DuPont, she connected with me with someone at Bonnaroo and probably said, "This woman is so persistent. Will you please give her a job so that she'll stop bothering me about it?" And so I helped out at Bonnaroo for a couple of years, and that led to my first full-time job with Kaleidoscope Media, where I was a publicist, junior publicist, and helped represent festivals like Bonnaroo, Forecastle, Nashville Dancin' back when, and then a couple of other restaurants, and then a couple venues, which led me to War Memorial and Tennessee Performing Arts Center. So it's kind of all snowballed itself, but it's always just been the most rewarding thing to be part of these big festivals or shows, or just continually going back to the experiences. I love watching people have like the experience of their year or their life, and it's an honor to be able to be part of that in any small way, even if it's just the fact that you saw an ad that I put out on Instagram and you clicked it and you bought the ticket.
There is a pride to that. That's very cool. So,
Yeah.
when you start at the Ryman, it's hard to go anywhere from there, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
But I mean, obviously an amazing venue. But you do spend some time at Kaleidoscope Media, like you mentioned, where you had a couple different roles there. And talk to me about what you learned from that experience that you still carry with you, today in your current role.
Absolutely. I think that that was a big learning moment as, my first full-time job. And I think I truly learned that putting in the time and putting in the honest work, not only at that in that position, but also the networking that goes along with it, was so important to keep going, right? I mean, there is no doing this job, especially in this industry, well, without connecting with other people who are either doing the same job or doing similar jobs, or at least are in the same industry, who you can learn from, whether it's ticketing or booking or food and beverage. So I think that role especially taught me that interfacing with all those departments or different roles in the industry or different organizations would be the only path to me, moving up or trying different things. And Kaleidoscope especially was a great way to get my feet wet very quickly. I think I joined, and 3 weeks later I was at Bonnaroo. So I had already been as someone who had enjoyed the festival, but being on the other side and having someone trust me with the responsibility of guiding media and, having to make sure I did ask questions and I was prepared to do so, was a great trial by fire. We'll call it that.
It's got to be interesting to work on different sides, not only promoter side, but also different types of venues. So what's that experience been like? Do you just grab a little bit from each of the places? I mean, you've got the Ryman, which of course is legendary, but is a very intimate, kind of small, gorgeous venue. And then you've got, Orion, where you're working now, which is 8,000, and you've got Bonnaroo, which is considerably more than that. So, what is that like? Are there these through lines that sort of, a venue is a venue, or do you just kind of pull from each of those?
I definitely pull from each of those, especially as I'm planning more of my institutional marketing, right? Like And I love the opportunity that I have to plan, kind of long term what I want marketing at the Orion to encompass. Focusing on making sure, I'd be remiss to not have all of Huntsville know exactly what the Orion's got going on after the first year, right? Like I gotta lay that foundation, but then I can start looking outward, in my second year, in my third year, I can start saying, all right, while we've got, enough followers here and we've got a really good flow on how we're keeping our immediate area updated on what we're doing, let's figure out how we're applying that outward. And I feel like that's something I've learned at every venue. Without that foundation of making sure you've got this loyal following and you're keeping them engaged with excellent content and you're being educational as well as interesting and you're not just selling the ticket. I think that's something I've taken from every single venue, whether I'm trying to get 2,300 people in the building or 8,000 people in the building, whether I'm working with 300 events a year or 90 events a year. I think it's being dynamic enough to accept that even though there are trends in marketing, knowing your market and your goals is so important. I've told this story a couple of times. The idea that Facebook is not necessarily considered the gold standard for what what marketers are using anymore, dependent on the demographic you're trying to reach. If I went into Huntsville and just decided that we weren't going to be working with Facebook as much because that's not the way that the trend was going, then we would have fallen completely short because Huntsville is a huge Facebook market. There's something to be said for listening and doing all of that research, no matter where you're starting, whether you feel that from one venue to another who your demographic would be or what channels you're using to talk to them, without doing that research and kind of going back and leaning on those skills that you learned from that small venue that you had been at or that internship or that first job, you're just doing yourself and the venue a disservice. So I think that making sure I'm continuing to stay not only up to date with trends in marketing, but trends in the market in which I'm serving and how we're growing that is the only way I see Orion marketing being successful.
After your time with Kaleidoscope, you kind of got back into the direct venue thing, where you were a marketing manager with War Memorial. And then you kind of, through some various steps, ended up working with NS2 for a while. So talk to me about that phase of your career.
I learned so much at NS2. I had gone from the venue side to the promoter side. I had I worked for an excellent team of people. I think that the people at NS2 are incredible. I learned so much. I was able to work in so many different markets, and that was something I had never done before. I had been in Nashville working for Nashville venues, or at least Tennessee, Bonnaroo. So being able to say, I've promoted a ghost tour kickoff in Bakersfield, California from Nashville is a little wild. I thought there would be a lot more getting used to, but I think kind of going back to it, that research was so important, right? Like I'm not going to do in Bakersfield what I'm going to do in Huntsville. And sometimes the challenge was not having all the time in the world to be like, I'm going to research the 32 markets that I'm working on very thoroughly before I start marketing this tour. The challenge there was really exciting, where you're working on a Bob Dylan show in Richmond, Virginia, but then you've got to switch over to the Metallica show at, the BOK Center and finding how you keep organized enough to be able to allow yourself that time to do the research and be creative and work, with management to make sure we're doing everything we can to make those shows a success. So I like to think that I would not be an excellent venue marketer without everything I learned there, because there can sometimes, especially in this industry, be a bit of a pitting promoters and venues against each other because venue needs the information, the promoter needs the information. We think that he's withholding
I don't know
something.
what you're talking about at all. I've never heard of that.
And that's been a huge, coming over and having, be like, oh my gosh, the promoter hasn't gotten us this yet. And I'm like, well, I know exactly why they haven't gotten that to us yet. And it is not promoter's fault. So I like to think that I am a friend to all promoters because of my experience at NS2, but I also feel like I was able to really learn like a creativity and a having fun at work. I had an excellent boss in Sarah Madalinsky. She really taught me about not only leadership as I came into this role, and I'm now leading a team, but also just how to kind of juggle a large workload while still being creative and still finding time to have fun with it.
So talk to me about then making that big leap then from NS2 to where you are today, and why was it time for a change?
It did break my heart to leave NS2 because I loved everything that they were doing. I loved Frank Productions. I saw that there was a venue that was being planned for Huntsville, and I had been talking for years and years about how my hometown could really benefit from great entertainment, and that I saw those strides being made in Von Braun Center, putting in the Mars Music Hall. I saw more venues or more bars or everything between kind of starting live music nights, or during COVID, I would go to Huntsville and they would have, different small concerts out in the downtown square area and have just chairs set up. So there was this like very palpable interest that I saw Huntsville having in entertainment and music especially. And when I saw Ryan did an article with, I believe, AL.com, I said, okay, I feel like this is probably time to put my money where my mouth is and find a way to work with these people so that I can make sure that I'm helping Huntsville achieve that goal of delivering these excellent, like, music experiences if that's what they're looking to do.
Yeah.
So I met with Ryan and I pretty much knocked on their office door and said, you're going to need an excellent marketer, and you should have one who's not only worked in the industry and knows that side of things, but also someone who speaks Huntsville and can navigate what that's going to be like, and making sure we have Huntsville on our side opening this giant venue. And I think it was a couple months later, I joined the team as maybe the third or fourth employee and kind of grew it from there. So it was a huge jump. And I think it was the idea that I was leaving NS2, where I felt very confident in my abilities and what I was doing at the time, to go essentially lead a team of something that I hadn't done before. I had certainly worked with venues, but I had never opened one before. So there was the matching of how excited I was to do that with how totally freaked out I was that I had come and told, the guy leading the charge that I would knock this out of the park. So I had to follow it up by knocking it out of the park.
It's been obviously a great run for you there, and it's neat that you're spending time in Nashville and getting a little hometown time as well. Before we got started, you mentioned your husband there is in the industry as well. Do you mind telling us how you guys met and how long you've been together?
Absolutely. He was a Belmont University alum. I met him when I was graduating myself. He had been out for a year. And I think we met at a bar, Mafioso's, which was a Belmont hangout. And we just kind of hit it off. I think we both talked about how Bleach was the best Nirvana album. And I think I was like, okay, this feels like maybe right. But then we just felt so young that I think for a solid year there, we were like, we're not dating. That's impossible. We can't like fall in love this early. And we did. And we got married a couple years later. We've been married 6 years in October. He is an audio supervisor at Ryman Auditorium, and been with them for about 6 years now, I think. So it's actually the best thing to have someone in my corner who understands the industry and who has a challenging schedule as well. We operate on absence makes the heart grow fonder, and we just stick with that. So when we do have time together, we take it. Neither of us are afraid to take a day off every once in a while because we know it will be the last time we'll see each other for a week or two. So we definitely prioritize that. But it's been an honor to have him by my side and vice versa, navigating our careers like this.
That's so cool. I love that. Hey, I know you're obviously pretty busy. Before we let you go, we want to hit you with our fast five. It's five quick questions, just looking for your short, instant response.
Okay.
What was your very first concert?
My very first concert was The Killers in Birmingham, Alabama.
Do you have a favorite concert?
Tom Petty with my mom, who raised me on Tom Petty in Nashville, Tennessee.
Oh, that's great.
That's great.
You mentioned the importance of taking a day off with a husband. What's your favorite thing to do on a day off?
Take the kayaks and go out to the river for sure.
Very nice. You get back to Huntsville. What's your go-to meal? The hometown classic that you just gotta have.
Oh my gosh, charcuterie and a great glass of wine at Domain South. It's not very Alabama, but it is the right way to go.
Last question. What's your theme song? So there's a reality TV show where cameras follow you all around, and the Olivia show is getting ready to go to air, and they say we need a theme song that kind of sums up the life of Olivia. What's the song?
Oh my gosh, it would have to be Crown on the Ground by Sleigh Bells, and no one would watch that show after having that be the intro, but we're gonna go with it. Who cares?
Sleigh bells. I
It's
like
canceled
that.
after the first season, and that's all right.
That's all right.
That's awesome. Hey, throw out some plugs here. People want to follow along with kind of some of the fun stuff you're doing, and Paul is the one who hit me to the venue. I was not familiar, and the pictures are just gorgeous. So, where are some places people can go and see some of the fun stuff you're working on?
Absolutely. So we have at the Orion Amphitheater on both Facebook and Instagram. We also have our website, theorionhuntsville.com, where there's a great About Us page that I just revised the other day. So it's very up to date with all of our great awards and things, and some awesome photography there as well. So keep up with us there. And then I'm on LinkedIn as well, Olivia Christian. I'd love to connect with anyone interested and talk more about venues in the industry.
Cool. I really appreciate you taking the time. Learn some fun stuff from you today, and best of luck with everything you're doing down there.
Oh, thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it. This was awesome.
And a big thanks to everybody for listening to this episode of Adventures in Venueland. Remember, you can subscribe and find more episodes wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. We do love your 5-star reviews. It helps others find us. Until the next adventure, I'm Dave Ruddleberger.
And I'm Paul Hooper. Thanks for listening, everyone. I'll have to make it down there to Rocket City sometime.
Charcuterie
in Rocket City. Who knew?
Who knew?
Adventures in Venueland is a side project of the Event and Venue Marketing Conference, a marketing conference that brings together diversified event and venue professionals to cultivate education, collaboration, and innovation for the growing sports and live entertainment industry. Find out more at eventvenuemarketing.com.
Audio editing and mixing by Camille Faulkner.
Design and digital advertising by Megan Ebeck.
Copywriting and publicity by Samantha Marker.
Guest booking and brand strategies by Paul Hooper.
Guest research by Dave Ruddleberger.
Marketing strategies by Paul Hooper, Megan Ebeck, and Samantha Marker. Thanks for joining us. Until the next adventure.